Hello. During this demonstration, I'd like to show you how you can use Broadcom's continuous testing tools as part of your continuous delivery pipeline. So let me show you the tools we're going to talk about. So on the screen, what we've got is the various Broadcom tools we're going to talk about. So in the top left-hand corner, this is your starting point. This is where your project will be defined within the PPM tool. It used to be called Clarity. So PPM is the initial scoping of the project, the resourcing, financing, etc. That integrates with Rally. Rally is the tool, our agile tool, that allows you to plan your development cycles, plan the stories, the features, and track how development progress is going. Now we can take those stories from Rally and import them into Agile Requirement Designer, and we can use those requirements to further refine the requirements within Agile Requirement Designer, and also to generate test cases, and we'll be showing you that. Now, once you've actually defined the requirements and you have those test cases ready, obviously the next thing is to actually develop the product. And once you're ready to actually start going down the release pipeline, in the top right hand corner we have two tools, the Continuous Delivery Director and Continuous Delivery Automation. These are the tools that actually will be scoping your release pipeline and the automation and orchestration, and we'll be showing that. And this will be all the steps required to take your code from development to production. Now, at any point during this testing, you may need things like test data. You may need virtual services to replace services that may not be available. You may need to do load testing. So we'll show you how, using the Broadcom toolset, we can generate test data, we can create those virtual services, run the testing, run the load testing, etc. Now, if you look in the middle of the screen, we have a small number of third-party products. So the tools we're going to show you, obviously we're going to show you what we call the art of the possible. If all these Broadcom tools were together, how we could deliver this solution. However, we also work with many third parties. What you see on the screen is a subset of the third parties that we work with. And we're very open to working with these tools. So when we actually integrate this into many of our customer solutions, it'll be a mixture of the Broadcom tools and also these third party tools. Now, before we actually start the demonstration, I just need to spend a second explaining what we're going to do as part of a demonstration. So we're going to show you an update to our WebLogic application. So we're using something called the MedRec application, which is part of WebLogic. And we're going to show you that we're going to actually write an update to the application. We need to deploy it and test it. And to test it, we need to do a few things. In our patient data, our Oracle database, we actually have confidential data. So we need to be able to mask that, we need to be able to generate new data, and also get some data for our testing tools. We obviously need to deploy the updates to the applications themselves. And also we're going to actually, this application actually uses a virtual service to this application. We're going to break that dependency and replace it with a virtual service so we can test the physician application in isolation. So as part of our release, we're going to do this. We're going to use a virtual service, generate test data, obviously deploy the updates, and then run our tests. So let's go on the demonstration. So we're now in our PPM dashboard. So I've logged in as a user. These are the projects this user's working on, and we have a high-level overview of the status. So how's the budget, how are the milestones, when's the dates of completion, that kind of thing. Each of these tiles, we have drill downs, so we can drill into these. If I want to drill into this one and look at the financials, we can go straight from that tile into the financial report to look at how the finances are tracking. And also we can link to tools like Agile Central. So if I use this links, I can go to the Agile Central dashboard. Now we're still within the PPM toolset here. And what you can see is at the bottom, these are the features that are being worked on, and we have the status. This status is automatically synced with Agile Central. So if I look at a different view here, so the team that are using Clarity, using PPM, don't need to log into the Agile Central team to check on status. This is synchronized automatically, and you can see here we have the release in the full. These are the projects. These are the estimated story points. These are the actual accepted, percentage complete. So a very simple view as to how the progress of development is going. And in this screen, we can also switch this to look at different releases. And again, tracking how that is changing as we go across the actual different releases that we're planning. So the PPM tool is obviously used by the project team. Let's switch to Agile Central to look at how the engineering team can use Agile Central. So I'm going to change to our Agile Central system. Now we've logged in, and this user, this is the dashboard for this user. They've laid it out in a way that they have a Kanban board, which shows those stories that are defined, in progress, completed, and accepted. At the bottom we have our test cases, so we can see which test cases are running against the stories we're working on. And we're going to start by actually looking at one particular user story. So if we look at this user story 2 here. So at this point, the story has been added to Agile Central. We have very simple requirements. So the requirements have been just keyed in as to what we need to do to actually deliver this story. Now, from the Agile Central team, what I'd like to do is first I'd like to assign this to a release. So we're going to say that this is going to be assigned to Q2 release. Now, you might notice in the bottom right-hand corner we get a little pop-up. That's the FlowDoc tool, our messaging tool, notifying the user that there's been a change. So that you'll see that as we run various things, that bubble will pop up. Now, also in this user story, if I just click Done to save that, what you'll also notice is that some of these other ones have got a little flask. Now that flask is the test cases. So these have test cases. You can see that this one, it's got a test case. The last time it ran, it passed. The last build, this is the Jenkins build number, was 193, and it ran on the 5th of March. Now if you look at our user story, we don't have a test case. You can see it's now assigned to Q2 release, but there's no test cases. So let's show you how we can take those requirements in Agile Central and then import them into Agile Requirement Designer to refine those requirements and also generate our test cases. So we're going to switch from here to our Agile Requirement Designer screen. Now, Agile Requirement Designer comes in two parts. There's a thick client, that's the editor, and a web client as a viewer. We're going to start in the thick client. Now, in Agile Requirement Designer, I could just start building a requirement from scratch. So I can click on this new button. We get an empty workflow. So let's get name, like so. Now we have the empty workflow. Now we can build the requirements purely from using these building blocks. So I can take this from here. We can give this a process name, like so. And we can then start building, creating relationships like so. So very simple, quick way to get started. However, what we want to do is take those requirements that were in Agile Central. So let me just clear this. And we're going to use our connector framework. Now, if you remember at the start, we talked about integrating with third parties. You can see here on the left-hand side, the fact that we have several third-party tools that we integrate with, as well as the Broadcom toolset. So we're going to go to Agile Central. And on the right-hand side, this is our login box. So I'm going to log in as my user into Agile Central. And what I'll be able to see is all of the stories, defects, all the Agile Central content are assigned to me. So if you remember that we actually assigned that story to release Q2. If I go down here into user stories, these are all the user stories. If I mouse over that one, US2 that we're looking at, we get the summary of what the story is. Now I know that's the story I want to work with. So I just click, drag, drop into my workspace. We make it a flow. And automatically what we're going to do is try and convert that text into a flow. A very simple flow. I click OK and just say yes. And we can at this point change the hierarchy. So we're going to do a simple hierarchy, but there's various different ways you can display it. We're going to stick to the basics. Right, we now have a flow. And if I move this out of the way, what you'll see is we've taken the text from that user story and we've now created into a simple flow like so. Now from here, we can then start working this flow. So we can start removing these relationships, changing the model, working with the team that had the requirements to ensure that everyone understands what the requirements are. Now what we're going to do is move on to a flow that we've already created. And what I'd like you to do is join me in the next video where we'll show you how we can actually then take these requirements and build these out and generate our test cases. Thank you.